Hey guys, my name is Samir, and today I'll be going through my book for Dr. Campbell's class. So, the book I chose is A Description of New Netherlands by Adrian van der Donk, edited with an introduction by Thomas F. O'Donnell, published, published by Syracuse University Press. So, this is how the book looks like. It's just a blue book, but on the inside you can find different parts, and I'll talk about that later. So this book really stood out to me because it gives us a rare window into what life looked like in the 17th century Dutch America, long before the English control. And when we talk about early American history, we usually jump straight to the English colonies like Jamestown or Plymouth. But this book reminds us that the Dutch were here first, and their influence shaped what later became New York. Okay, so the background on this book and the author. So, this book, A Description of New Netherland, was written in 1655 by Adrian van der Donk. He was a Dutch lawyer, scholar, and settler who lived in what's now the lower Hudson Valley region. In fact, that's like a fun fact that I found. The city of Yonkers, New York, actually got its name from him. He was known as the Jonkier, which means young gentleman in Dutch. Van der, Van der Donk was kind of like the first American political activist. He loved the land, he respected the native people, and believed the colony could flourish if only it were given freedom from the Dutch West India Company, which tightly controlled everything. And speaking of the Dutch West India Company, I got the seal of the colony printed out because I don't know how to edit it inside the video. Sorry about that, doctor. And this crown here and the logo represent the Dutch West India Company, and this beaver in the middle, it's like it represents how important the fur trade was for them. So that's interesting. Okay. And this version that I read was edited by Thomas F. O'Donnell in 1968 and published by Syracuse University Press. O'Donnell translated and annotated the original Dutch text and provided a detailed introduction explaining why Van der Donk's writing mattered so much, not only as a piece of colonial history but as an early argument for self governance and civic rights in America. Okay, so I'm gonna get into the book structure right now. It's divided into three main parts, and each part explores a different side of New Netherlands. So, part one describes the land itself, the geography, the rivers, the mountains, the plants and animals. It's almost like an early scientific report full of curiosity and detail. Part 2 focuses on the Native American people who lived in the region, their customs, languages, political system, and Van der Donk gives one of the earliest respectful accounts of indigenous life written by a European. And part 3 deals with the Dutch settlement and government, where Van der Donk argues that the colony deserves more independence and better management. Together, these three parts show how Van der Donk viewed the New World, not as a wild frontier to conquer, but as a place where people trade and nature could and where people trade and nature could all coexist under a fair and free system. And speaking of like the nature and geography and the region, I printed out a small map of New Netherlands. So this is New York basically here, and it shows like legends, shows where it's really dark, it's like the most influence, where it's like lighter, it's like less influence until we get into no influence territory. So that's pretty cool, I think. And sorry, I printed it out because I don't know how to include it in the video. Okay, so I'm gonna go through some of the main ideas explored in the book right now. The first one is the land and its riches. Van der Donk paints a vivid picture of New Netherlands' natural world. He talks about the Hudson and Mohawk valleys, the fertile soil, forests, rivers, and wildlife. To him, the land wasn't just beautiful, it was an opportunity. He wanted to convince people back in the Netherlands that this place was worth settling, farming, and protecting. He described everything from the climate to beaver trapping, fish in the rivers, and fruit trees. His tone feels like a mix between explorer, scientist, and salesman. He wanted readers to see the potential of America through Dutch eyes. The second one is Native American societies. One of the most fascinating parts of the book is how he writes about Native Americans. Instead of seeing them as savages, like many Europeans did, Van der Donk actually shows curiosity and respect. He writes about their farming, hunting, social structures, and even their diplomacy. He took time to learn their languages and customs, noting how they governed themselves and solved disputes. This made his work stand out as he was one of the first Europeans to describe native peoples as human equals, capable of complex thoughts and political order. In some ways, he challenged the idea of European superiority that dominated at the time. 3. Trade, commerce, and prosperity. Another theme is the importance of trade. The Dutch were merchant at heart, and Van der Donk saw New Netherlands as a natural extension of that commercial spirit. He talked about beaver pelts, fur trading, and how the colony could become a major trading hub if managed wisely. He believed that in a balance between economic opportunity and moral governance, a vision that felt very modern for its time. And the fourth subject is going to be about freedom and self-governance. Uh, Perhaps the strongest message in his writing is political. Van der Donk didn't just describe New Netherlands, he criticized how it was run. At the time, the Dutch West India Company had a total control over trade and administration, and Van der Donk thought the system was corrupt and inefficient. He argued for local government where settlers could make decisions for themselves instead of being ruled by distant corporate officials in Amsterdam. In other words, he was calling for something that looked like early democracy over a century before the American Revolution. This was radical thinking for 1655, and it makes him one of the earliest advocates for political freedom in America. The fifth subject is going to be about cultural exchange and identity. Finally, Van der Donk's work shows an emerging sense of colonial identity, people beginning to see themselves as something different from European. He describes settlers adapting to the new environment, learning from Native Americans, and developing a hybrid way of life. You can see the early seeds of what would later become an American identity, independent, practical, and connected to the land. Okay, and I'm gonna give like a last evaluation. So, gonna start with a question: did Van der Donk succeed in what he set out to do? So the answer is yes and no. His description definitely succeeded in promoting New Netherlands and leaving behind a detailed record of the Dutch colonial world, and the book remains one of the best primary sources on early America, but politically his dreams of a freer, more democratic colony was cut short. The Dutch West India Company kept its power, and by 1664 the English took it over and renamed New Amsterdam to New York. But still, Van der Donk's vision for representative government, respect for diversity, and economic freedom continued to influence later generations. And personally, reading this book and O'Donnell's edition was a completely different experience from just skimming online. And as we know today, like AI and search engines can summarize all the books in seconds, but what they can't do is give you the texture, the emotion, and sense of time that comes from reading this book. Like, I actually enjoyed reading this book the time I had it, and I wish I could, I wish I could like read more of it. It really spiked my interest in the colonies, like how Van der Donk was seeing the colony. He was like, but it meant in the time it was like revolutionary thinking. So the way he thought about the Dutch West India, the West Dutch India Company, and how they did like trade and commerce. He wanted more freedom. So, like most of his values still live today, even though he didn't like achieve all of them back then. So, yeah. So that's it. That's my book, Description of New Netherlands by Adrian van der Donk. It's more than just a colonial report. It's one of the first glimpses of an American voice forming in the 17th century. So, thank you so much for watching, Doctor. I really hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, thank you.